Hey everybody, welcome back to the SuperBake podcast. I'm your host, Baker. Let's talk about stuff. So I've been on a bit of a horror game kick lately. I think I've mentioned this before. I replayed Resident Evil 2 Remake recently, last couple months, and then I've also played Resident Evil 7 Biohazard as well as Resident Evil 8 Village. I just beat 8 last week, my second playthrough. So, been on a bit of a scary movie game binge lately. I'm not sure why. I don't really know where it came from. I guess just because I never really was super into the Resident Evil series. I have a lot of friends who really enjoy it. They've always hyped it up for me, but I just never really got into it. Never really got on that bandwagon. As well as watching the movies. Just it was always one of those series. Like I was aware of it. I knew how much people liked it, but it just never resonated with me. But I've decided to give it a shot. I almost said give it a shit. But give it a shot, and I'm really glad I did. So I'm just going to kind of talk about those briefly before I kind of go into the main topic of the podcast, which is my spoiler review for the Dead Space remake that just came out earlier this year. I just kind of wanted to talk about Resident Evil because Dead Space is basically Resident Evil in space, so it kind of leads into it a little bit. But yeah, I think Resident Evil 2 Remake is probably one of the best horror games that I've played in a long time. And of the ones that I've played so far, I think it's my personal favorite, although I really did like 8 quite a bit. I might go more in depth on my thoughts on those games, maybe at some point in the future. But for now, I'm just going to kind of briefly give my thoughts on each one of them. I didn't play RE3 Remake. I do have it in my backlog. I just haven't played it yet just because I've heard so-so things about it. Some people say that they think it's really good and kind of an underrated classic. Other people have said that they weren't crazy about it. They felt like it was kind of a misstep, that the Nemesis guy was kind of underutilized, so I'm not sure. But anyways, yeah, RE2 Remake, really good. A good balance of action with horror elements. It does a good job of keeping you on your toes. The claustrophobic dark corridors of like the police department that you spend a good chunk of the game in felt really good. As the game went on, I kind of found myself a little bit less interested in the story, not to a significant degree, but just like I think the opening segment with the police station was probably the best part of that game, in my opinion. But I really liked that game. Really short, too. I didn't realize how short each game in the series is. I think my first playthrough, I beat it in like less than 10 hours, something like that. But yeah. Resident Evil 7, really good. Kind of goes back to the scarier roots of the series. I know the Resident Evil series kind of became more action-oriented as it went on, especially after 4, I think. I think 5 and 6 were mostly just action shooters, so... But 7 was really good, definitely creepy, had some really creepy moments in it. Had some of those classic elements of the older games where you're pursued by like the unkillable monsters and stuff like Jack Baker and all that stuff. But I really liked it. I liked the tight quarters of the Baker family home that you're stuck in, as well as like some of the later moments in the game are really cool too. But 8 was actually one of the ones I liked the most. Again, 2 was probably my favorite out of those 3, but I really liked 8 a lot more than I thought I would. I think it's because it was like that perfect blend of action and horror that I really like. It made me think of Dead Space 2 in many ways. I played through it twice like I did New Game Plus, and I love it. It's really addicting to play. I'm probably going to go back and play it again just because I want to try to max out the Magnum. Like I don't complete games ever, but that's one of the games where I'm almost tempted to try, but we'll see about that. Anyways, all that to say, yeah, I've really grown a new appreciation for scary games lately in the last few years. As far as the Dead Space series goes, so interestingly enough, I never played the original Dead Space back in 2008. I played Dead Space 2, which is one of my favorite games that I've ever played, as well as Dead Space 3, which was good, but it was definitely more of an action game. It seems like in the Dead Space series, they started out mostly horror with some action elements in the first game. And then in the second game was kind of like RE8. It was a nice equal blend of action and horror. And then the third game was mostly action with a few scary moments sprinkled in throughout. I remember 3 was kind of forgettable. I know it had the co-op option where you could play with a friend. I never utilized that, but I don't really remember a whole lot about it in terms of the story and what happens. But 2 always stuck with me. I liked 2 a lot. I remember that infamous scene where you have to control that little needle thing going to Isaac Clarke's eye, and that really freaked me out watching that scene. But yeah, it was 2. Dead Space 2 was always one of my favorite games. But all my friends have said that the first one is the best of the series. But I just, for whatever reason, I just missed it. I missed the boat on that one. I never got around to playing it. So with the remake that came out earlier this year, it came out on January 27th of this year. It seemed like a perfect opportunity to finally play it, and I did. And I can safely say that it was well worth it. I almost regret not having played the original. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about that game, give my thoughts on it, some of the things I liked, some of the things I didn't like. Again, as always, I think I said this before, but, spoiler alert if you haven't played the game, and if you're not familiar with the original game and you don't want it spoiled, consider this your warning. But just going to talk about the plot of the game really quick, and it's pretty straightforward. You play as Isaac Clarke, a systems engineer on the USG Kellyan ship, and you are on your way to investigate a distress signal sent from a ship called the USG Ishimura, which is basically like a planet cracking ship. Kind of the backstory of that is there's these ships that humanity has created that can go from planet to planet and mine it for minerals, essentially. And that's what the USG Ishimura is. You get a distress signal from it, and you and your crew are sent there to investigate the cause of the signal as well as find out what happened to the crew. When you arrive, you find the crew is missing, and that it looks like something very bad happened on that ship. And very quickly, things take a turn south as you encounter these grotesque, almost zombie-like monsters with spikes growing out of their forelimbs called necromorphs. And basically from there, you have to use your engineering know-how to try to save your crew and escape from the ship. So one of the things I've always liked about the Dead Space series is, even though it is a shooter game, it's that third-person over-the-shoulder shooter. One of the things I've always liked about it is that the weapons you use in there are not like traditional weapons. Like you have the signature plasma cutter weapon that you can change the orientation on it. So like if you need to shoot at an enemy's legs, you can change it to aim horizontally. If you want to shoot off their arms, you can change it to aim vertically. So it kind of suits different situations. But that's like Isaac's signature weapon. You have like the line gun, which is like a bigger version of the plasma cutter. You have like a pulse rifle, which is sort of like a machine gun, but it shoots little beams of energy at things. And you have other different weapons you can use as well. But it's like, I like the fact that he uses tools instead of like traditional weapons. Like he doesn't really have like a handgun or a machine gun. He has all tools that are like alternatives to those kinds of weapons. But Isaac never really gets like a magnum or something or a pistol. I always like that about the games. It gives them kind of their own unique flavor. And you can upgrade those weapons as well as your engineering suit, which again is also kind of an iconic look for Isaac. I always love the way the suit looks. In this game, I unlocked this, I think it's like a suit that like there's a cult you encounter in the game partway through, and I think they wear like these special like black and white suits, and I actually unlocked that. It's like one of the later suits you unlock. It's kind of cool looking. It kind of has like this skull pattern on it, but I always liked Isaac's look more. Like his engineering suit actually looked really cool with like the different like metal bars that go across it, as well as the helmet with like the visors, the way his visor looks, with the glowing glass on the front. Like it's an iconic look. I always liked that about it quite a bit. But yeah, that's one of the main things about the series that always kind of stuck with me. So yeah, this game is definitely, it leans more towards being scary than it does action. Not to say that there isn't action. There's definitely plenty of that. There's plenty of shooting. There's plenty of decapitation and dismembering to do in this game for sure. And even though you play as an engineer, even though Isaac is not really like your traditional hero like Master Chief or anything like that, he's got plenty of tools at his disposal to take them out. One thing that this game has that was also in the sequels as well is you have telekinesis that you can use as part of your suit, that you can use to pick up objects and throw them, as well as move them to solve puzzles. And a cool little mechanic that you can do is you can actually use that kinesis to actually pick up parts of enemies. Like all the enemies have spikes on them, so you can actually use that to impale other enemies, which is actually really nice to use if you find yourself running low on ammo, or if you just don't want to waste ammo on a smaller, weaker enemy. You also have this ability called stasis, where you can freeze objects and slow them down significantly. This can be used, again, to solve puzzles, like if you need to get through a door that's slamming shut at high speed, or if you just want to slow down enemies in their tracks, so you can just do a crap load of damage to them and just kick their asses before they have a chance to really do anything. That's really helpful against some of the bigger mini-bosses, like the brutes you encounter on the ship. But yeah, comparing this to the other two games, and again, it's been a long time since I played them, this definitely feels scarier. The Ishimura that you're on the ship is definitely very claustrophobic. It kind of has that feel of like the Alien franchise, particularly the first one, where even though you have more weapons at your disposal than Sigourney Weaver's character, there's still that sense of like just claustrophobia you get wandering through the halls of the Ishimura. Just like every quarter, you don't know if there's going to be a necromorph waiting for you. They can crawl through the ventilation system, so sometimes you'll hear them crawling around you, but they won't pop out, which kind of makes you a little bit more nervous because you keep thinking like, oh shit, when is this thing going to show up? Like I know that son of a bitch is watching me. Another thing I want to mention about this game too, if you have a headset, I definitely recommend playing this game with the headset on, just because you kind of get like that sense of like surround sound. You can kind of hear stuff in the background behind you and kind of off to the side. It really helps. It really helps build up the atmosphere of the game and makes it, in my opinion at least, it makes it quite a bit scarier. But yeah, a couple of things about this game too, that it's not a direct like one-for-one remake of the original. I mean, for the most part, I think the story, from what I've seen watching YouTube videos, the story does follow the original pretty closely, but there are a few deviations they make in this one. The biggest one is that in this game, Isaac Clarke is no longer just a silent protagonist. They gave him more of a personality in 2 and 3, but in the first game, he really is just sort of a blank slate that the player can experience the game through. But he doesn't, as far as I'm aware, I don't think he has any spoken dialogue, and you only see his face, I think, at the very end of the game, and maybe also in the beginning. In this game, you see a lot more of Isaac without his helmet on, and they did change the way he looks quite a bit. He looks completely different in this game from how he does in 2 and 3. So they actually modeled his character after the voice actor that plays him, Gunnar Wright, who does return to play his role as Isaac Clarke. Also, Tanya Clarke returns to play her role as Nicole Brennan, Isaac's girlfriend in the game. And they actually used their likeness for the character models, which has actually been kind of a running joke people have made about this game, because Gunnar Wright's, he kind of looks, at least in the game, his character model kind of looks like Adam Sandler a little bit, so I kept thinking like just Adam Sandler in this game running around like shooting the stuff, like Happy Gilmore or something. Like people tell you like, oh, you need to go there to solve this thing, and he's like, that's something that could have been brought to my attention yesterday. I can't really do a good Adam Sandler, but that's kind of something that kept coming to my mind, was just thinking about that. But yeah, it's funny. Like, but I appreciate that they used his likeness for Isaac. It looks pretty cool. He actually kind of just gives him like an everyday average Joe look, which I think kind of fits him, since he's supposed to be an engineer and he's not supposed to be a warrior. For me personally, I think it kind of works in the game's favor. But that was a cool little detail they added in this. And then they give him a lot more dialogue in the game too. There's more scenes where you see Isaac interacting with other characters that he's with, including like one of the villains of the game, Dr. Mercer, who also I think is given a bigger role in this than he was in the first game. I think in the first game he is mostly off screen, but in this one he has a much bigger presence, and he's genuinely creepy as a villain too. He's got a really cool creepy moment with Isaac later in the game where he actually uses stasis to his advantage, and it's a pretty chilling moment to watch for sure. Yeah, and then other characters in the story are given larger parts too. It just feels like it's more than just a new coat of paint slapped onto an old game. It actually feels like the creators of this really took their time in reverence to the original game. They wanted to make something that was actually, it felt like it was adding to the story, not just an HD remaster. So I really appreciated that about this game. I'll just kind of talk about just some of the things I liked about it, and just maybe some of the things that I might change. And just want to state this for the record, my criticisms for this game are going to be pretty few, and honestly, these are mostly just nitpicks for me. I mean, there's probably people out there that are going to disagree with me on this, but yeah, this is just kind of what I think about it. But as far as like positives go, there's quite a few of them. First of all, visual-wise, the game looks amazing. This game was made on the Frostbite engine, and they really did a good job of just adding a new level of polish and detail to the game. again, like it's not just like that the graphics are updated. They actually look genuinely good. Like, or they look genuinely way better than they did on the PS3. Like every corridor has this level of detail to it where it's like genuinely unnerving to walk down it. The way the lighting is done in the game, again, it kind of makes me think of the Resident Evil games. Like, there's dark corners and sometimes you don't really know what's lurking in them. There's moments in the game where I actually found myself almost like walking right into a necromorph and I was like, oh shit, and like, suddenly I was in a fight. Yeah, like the lighting in the game is really used to the advantage of the creatures to really make them blend in to where sometimes you don't even realize they're there until they're basically like on top of you. So that's really awesome. And then also I love the models of the necromorphs themselves. The way they look, they're so creepy. Like the way they stumble around and stuff. It's like every time they saunter over to you, it's so unnerving. Just the way their movement is. It's just so creepy. It's like way creepier than a typical zombie. Could be the fact that they have spikes growing out of their damn arms, but I don't know. Might be besides the point. Another thing too is the game controls pretty well for the most part. Shooting the creatures feels really good. Combat feels really good. Of course, the stomp from the original game is in this one where you can stomp on creatures, and it always feels good. It feels good to crunch their little asses under your boot. I love that. Yeah, like each gun feels unique. I love the way they feel when they fire. That's one of the things too, is like, even though you don't use traditional guns in this game, I really do think that this game has some of the best gunplay that I've seen in a while. Every shot feels genuinely good, and like you feel the weight of the tool that you're using in combat. Like I said before, each one feels distinct, it feels unique, and it feels helpful in certain situations. Like the plasma cutter is good for taking out the regular necromorph guys when you want to shoot off their legs real quick. The pulse rifle is good when you need to mow down a bunch of enemies really fast. The flamethrower is really good when you need to take out a bunch of those little creatures that are crawling all over the ship to try to jump on Isaac. It really does feel like each one has like its own unique, distinct use in the game. And that's the other thing too about this game that I like as well. So item management is a big part of this game. You only have a limited number of item slots you can use. I think by the time you upgrade everything, you have something like between 30 to 40. So I mean, you upgrade them, you get more item slots by upgrading your engineer suit. So by the end of the game, you've got usually more than enough for your weapons and ammo and stuff. And most stuff that you pick up takes up an item slot. So if you pick up a health pack, that's an item slot. If you pick up ammo, granted, your ammo can be combined and you can carry so much in one stack, but eventually, yeah, you can only carry so much ammo, and each one of your weapons takes up an item slot. So you don't want to carry all your weapons in one go, since you can only really equip 4 at a time. So there's not much need to have 5 on you, unless you've got the space for it. But it's definitely something else they borrowed from the Resident Evil series. Like, item management is a big part of this game. Like, I played this game on normal, and I got through it fine, but there were definitely moments where I had to kind of be a little bit careful, especially in the beginning of the game. Like, okay, do I bring more ammo with me and maybe let fewer health packs since I don't have that many item slots, or, and risk getting killed? Or do I take more health with me and not as much ammo and risk being essentially helpless? By the end of the game, a lot of this kind of goes away because you've got more than enough space. Like, I never once found myself in danger of running out of ammo, especially towards the end of the game. By the end of the game, I pretty much felt like an unstoppable badass. I was just plowing my way through bitches on that ship. It was awesome. Another thing about this game that I really like is, like in Dead Space 2 and 3, there's a New Game Plus option that returns in this. I think I've said this before on the podcast. I love New Game Plus. To me, there's no reason not to have it. It just adds to every game that I've ever played. And in this, you can play through it again. You have all your weapons, all your upgrades, so pretty much you're an unstoppable badass from the beginning, and you can just mow down enemies, and it makes it a lot of fun. And it, like I said, it adds a lot of replayability to the game. And also, too, I think you actually do have to play through the game at least twice to unlock the true ending. You get the regular ending. Not going to go into that too much. I'll let you guys kind of experience it for yourself if you haven't played it. But there's another ending you can get if you actually play through the game again on New Game Plus. So yeah, that's definitely really cool. As far as nitpicks go, and again, these are minor, and they really didn't take away from the game too much. I did say that the game does control pretty well as far as combat goes. In terms of Isaac himself and like his movement, sometimes he can be a little slow and clunky. I'm not sure if maybe they kept a lot of the controls intact from the original 2008 game, but there are moments in the game where it feels like Isaac should move maybe a little faster than he does. But I don't know. I'll chalk it up to maybe he's an engineer, so maybe he's not that physical of a person. Plus, he's wearing that big bulky suit, so I don't know. I guess it can be kind of forgiven for that, but I don't know. I just feel like if I was in his situation and I was being chased by these undead space monsters, like I would be hauling ass to get away from them. But yeah. But overall, I mean, I think his movement works well enough for the game, and I think the idea is that it makes you move slower because you are supposed to be just this regular guy, so it makes it that much scarier. Like when the necromorphs are chasing you and you're trying to get away from them, it makes it that much creepier because you know, like if you turn around, they're probably going to be right there, like they're going to be on your ass chasing you. So, I guess another thing that I would have liked to have seen in this game is maybe a little bit more enemy variety. I know that it's basically just a remake of the original, and there's a decent amount of enemies that you fight, but for the most part, you fight the same three enemies throughout, I would say 90% of the game. Like the regular necromorphs, which are like the mutated people. There's also like these little heads that come out of nowhere and then grow like these tentacles out of their heads, kind of like John Carpenter's The Thing. And there's also like these little, like, I guess they're supposed to be like dog creatures or something that will jump on you from like walls and stuff. And there's other variations too, like there's these ones that have like these weird bulbous arms that'll basically explode if you shoot them, as well as these other ones that have like this sac in their stomach that will, if you shoot them in their stomach, it'll explode and these little creatures will come out. But for the most part, the first three that I mentioned, like the head and the regular mutated necromorphs and the little dog creatures, those are the ones that you fight, I would say, throughout the majority of the game. Sometimes you do encounter brutes that operate as sort of like a mini-boss, but they're pretty easy to beat, and you don't run into too many of them. I feel like I ran into like a handful of them. And then there's the Leviathan boss that you fight. But yeah, beyond that, the enemy variety is fairly scarce. I remember in 2, you fought humans as well as necromorphs. Like there's like I think it's the cult that shows up near the end of that game, and you fight them as well. And that was a nice little mix-up. It was kind of cool to see Isaac use his tools to fight humans who actually have guns, as opposed to taking on necromorphs. So I guess I would have liked if we could have gotten a little bit more of just variety in the enemies in this game. Like, I mean, I really feel like with the necromorphs, you could have done just about anything with them. I like to think of like, what if you got like necromorphs that mutated from like insects? You had like the humanoid ones, but what if you had ones that mutated from like insects or animals or something like that? That would have been cool. Like, just imagine like kind of like these giant spider-like necromorphs chasing you around. That would have been so damn cool and creepy. But as it is, I think it's fine. And really, it is a ship that has humans on it, so I guess it makes sense that most of them are just mutated versions of humans. So, I mean, I guess I can forgive that. But I just kept thinking, like, with the Leviathan, like, well, where the hell did that thing come from? But, you know, whatever. It's fine. As it is, I think it's the enemy variety works. It works with the game, and it's not distracting or anything like that. Like, it never felt like it took away from the game. Not at all. Plus, I mean, they do throw a wrench in things with, like, the regenerating necromorph that chases you around the ship every so often after you run into Dr. Mercer. So that does a good job of keeping things kind of tense. I remember the regenerator necromorph in 2, and I didn't even realize that he was in the first game. So when he showed up, I remember I had kind of like a fanboy moment. I was like, oh shit, it's that dude. And then I was like, oh wait, this is terrifying. I have to run now because I can't kill this asshole. But no, that was really cool. Yeah, and just there's little things like that in this game that I really enjoyed. The only other thing too is like there are some side things you can do, like side quests you can do to like get better gear and stuff, but there's not a whole lot there as far as like side content. Like yeah, there's achievements and trophies you can earn, but I didn't find too much reason to explore that much of the Ishimura other than just pure curiosity. So I guess I would have liked it if there could have been maybe a few more side quests. Again, I think for what it is, it's fine, but just something to kind of stretch out the playtime. And also on that topic, I do want to mention that as well. As far as like the value of this game goes, so again, because you can play through it twice, I think you're going to get, at least for me, I feel like I got my money's worth out of it. Beating the game the first time, I put in, I think, between 12 to 15 hours. My second playthrough, obviously, I went through it way faster because I knew where to go, I knew what to do, so that made getting through it a lot easier, plus the fact that I was just an overpowered bastard. Like, I got through it really fast. But, yeah, right now I think it is $60, so it's full price. Personally, I think it's worth it. If you like scary games, it's definitely right up your alley. It's, like I said, it's Resident Evil in space. That's what it's been called by many people for years. if you've played the original, I still think that this is going to give you just enough new content with the updated graphics and the fact that Isaac Clarke has more dialogue and more, character in this story. I think that that's another reason to pick it up. But if you are like me and you've never played the original Dead Space, I think this is a perfect excuse to get into it. So for my money, I would say I think it's worth it personally. Like, it has a high recommendation from me. If you are the kind of person who likes to get more of time out of your games for the money you're spending, I mean, I guess you could wait for this to go on sale, but personally, I think it's worth picking up right now. It really is that good. Like, I've played through it twice. I'll probably play through it at least a couple more times because, one, I want to try to play through it on the hardest difficulty to see how I do there. And two, I just kind of want to see if I can unlock everything. See if I can get, if there's other suits that I've missed. I think there's one that you have to beat on a certain difficulty to get it. It's supposed to be like one of the hardest things to get in the game, but yeah, I mean, I recommend getting it. I think it's worth it, even if you're not even a huge fan of like the Dead Space series, but you just like scary games. I think this is just something that you owe it to yourself to check out. So check it out and let me know what you guys think of it. So now I wanted to take some time to talk about the latest and I believe the final trailer for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom for the Switch. So this game comes out next month, May 12th, so a little under a month from now. So I did want to talk about the trailer, kind of talk about my thoughts about it, as well as kind of give my thoughts on Breath of the Wild, and kind of what I think about Tears of the Kingdom and stuff. So in the latest trailer, a couple things I noticed about it. I kind of took notes watching it. I watched it a few times, once to kind of take it all in, and then again to kind of take notes on it. I noticed in the latest trailer, it looks like Demise from Skyward Sword might be in this game. We only get a glimpse of him from the back, but it looks like it's the character with the same hair, like kind of like that, almost like fiery hair. So it looks like he's in this one. I know that this is essentially a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild. It's in the exact same world, the same characters and everything. I'm not sure how much time has passed between this and Breath of the Wild. My understanding is I think it's supposed to take place pretty much immediately after that game, but I've done no research on that, so don't hate me for not knowing too much about this game. But yeah, in this game, it looks like there's a lot more aerial-based levels. Like, it looks like there's platforms that rise up out of Hyrule, and then Link has to use these new abilities he gets. One of them, I think, is called, like, Ascent or something, where he can basically rise up to them. So it looks like there's some interesting dynamics there that'll come about in the gameplay. Like, I see in the trailer, you can see Link jumping from platform to platform as he's trying to traverse these sky islands. I kind of got vibes of like Skyward Sword in that sense, because in that game I remember you could like dive down and actually explore the lands below as well as the islands above. So I'm kind of getting vibes from that in this game. So it kind of makes me wonder if that's just a coincidence, or if that is kind of if that was on purpose. Because if it was, I mean, that would make sense that Demise would show up in this game. We also get to see the big baddie Ganondorf is actually in this one. And I have to say, it's weird hearing him talk. I mean, I know they had voice acting in Breath of the Wild, but everyone but Link spoke in that game, which that always kind of threw me off. Just having voice acting in a Zelda game is just so weird to me. But seeing Ganondorf actually finally talk in this one, look, it was definitely kind of a shock to the system. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I think the voice actor who plays him, I think he does fine. He definitely sounds threatening, but it was just so strange. Like, as a longtime Zelda fan, it's just so weird hearing these characters speak. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how his character is in this game. But I know we had Calamity Ganon in Breath of the Wild, but we didn't have Ganondorf. So to actually see him show up in this game, I'm pretty excited about that. I always like him as a villain. I love Ocarina of Time. I think he was one of the best villains in there. One of the best villains in video games, personally. I don't know if I go back and play that game again, I'm not sure if I'll still feel that way. But yeah, like seeing him in this trailer, that gave me goosebumps. It was awesome to see. And again, I'm just curious, like if he's in this game and if Demise is also in this game, I just kind of wonder like who's going to be the main villain and which one is Link going to fight? Is he going to fight both? Are they going to kind of morph together to make one villain? There's a part in the end of the trailer where we see like this three-headed dragon that almost looks like it has like the face of Ganondorf or Demise, basically King Ghidorah from Godzilla. So I'm curious to see if that's supposed to be like some sort of combination of Demise and Ganondorf that you have to take on. I'll be curious to see that. Another thing I saw in this trailer, and this is something that I've been seeing in a lot of gameplay analysis videos on YouTube, is Link has this new ability called Fuse, where you can actually fuse items together to make new weapons and also new shields too. Like, that's really interesting. Like, I saw one trailer where Link could actually, he took a pitchfork and combined it with a stick to basically make a even longer pitchfork, which was actually kind of funny. But he could use it to like stab enemies from like a pretty good distance away. He made like this 12-foot long stick. So I thought that was interesting. And you can like combine your shield with stuff. Like you can combine your shield with weapons to give them an extra defense boost. As well as like you can use like ingredients, like items you pick up, like mushrooms. You can put those on your shield to where like if you get this mushroom that explodes, if an enemy attacks you while you're blocking, it'll explode in their face and confuse them. I was like, that's really cool. Now that fuse mechanic, that has me interested. And I think that that is also supposed to be Nintendo's way of kind of fixing the item durability issue from Breath of the Wild. So I'm going to kind of go on a bit of a tangent here and get on my soapbox for a bit. I know a lot of people have defended item durability from Breath of the Wild. I know it was a point of contention for a lot of fans. Some people either liked it or they hated it. I personally found myself in the latter group. I was not a fan of item durability. I don't like it in any game. I just don't feel like it serves much purpose. Like I'm currently playing Fire Emblem Three Houses, and you have item durability in that game, but I think that's pretty traditional for Fire Emblem games. But in a game like that, it's more forgiving because you can fix them, you can buy new weapons, and it's not that bad. The problem with Breath of the Wild that I had with item durability is that you can't repair your weapons, and you can't buy new ones. You just have to basically find weapons, essentially. Yes, people made the argument that, okay, enemies drop weapons and often enough that you never are short on them. It's like, yeah, that's true, but I also hated it because every weapon broke, though, including the Master Sword. I would have been okay if every weapon but the Master Sword broke. Like the Master Sword, it's supposed to be like this legendary weapon, and yes, it doesn't break on the bosses, like the Ganonblight bosses that you have to fight. Like those guys, it doesn't break against them, but it'll break against everything else. And that I don't know, I didn't like that. It would have been nice if that weapon didn't break ever. But every other weapon breaking, it wouldn't have been that bad if they didn't break that often. It really didn't feel like the rarity of the weapon or the strength of it made any difference. It always felt like, okay, I at best am going to get 2 uses out of this sword and then it's going to break immediately. So that always kind of frustrated me a little bit. I would have liked it if you could have like at least repaired them or maybe figured out some way to make them stronger, like improve the durability so that it took longer. But as it stood, you just had to basically find either really rare legendary weapons like the ones you got for defeating the main bosses, or you just basically had to find legendary weapons fighting strong enemies. I personally didn't like it. Like a lot of people said that it encouraged exploration because if you lose a weapon, now you get to go fight another enemy to get a better weapon. But for me personally, it actually had the opposite effect. It actually made me not want to explore because I didn't want to risk breaking what weapons I had. Yes, it's true that I never found myself short on weapons, but I don't know, personally, it just always kind of irritated me, and it felt really out of place in a Zelda title. I was really hoping they were going to get rid of it in this game, and I'm going to be honest, I was a little disappointed to see that it is going to be in Tears of the Kingdom, but the fuse mechanic looks like it's going to help get around that a little bit. It looks like when you fuse weapons together, 1, it repairs them, and 2, it makes them much stronger so they last longer. Like you see Link when he combines a stick with a rock to basically make a club. And the stick in the trailer looked like it was pretty low on durability because he'd already used it in one fight, but then he combines it with the rock and suddenly it's fixed again. So that's an interesting mechanic. I'm really excited to see how that goes. And it definitely looks like you can make a lot of interesting stuff with it. Like in this game, vehicles appear to be a big part of the game too. Like we see Link using the fuse mechanic to combine logs together to make a raft, and he puts like a little like fan on them to make them propel forward. And there's also one really cool moment in the trailer that I liked where it looks like Link is operating some sort of makeshift mech as he's getting ready to take on a bunch of moblins on like this giant rock golem. So I was like, that's interesting. Now that stuff I can get behind. So I'm really excited to see that in action. Like that mech scene in the trailer, that got me pretty hyped up. I like that. Well, I say mech, it's basically Link on a giant piece of rock, but he operates it almost kind of like it's a mech. So that's what I'm going to call it. But yeah, like the one thing I would like though, kind of going back on my item durability thing is I wish Nintendo would at least give you the option to turn it off if you don't like it. Like you like put it in the game, but at least give me the option like, okay, if you don't want item durability, you can at least turn it off. You know, at least make it optional. I don't feel like that would be that difficult. I would like to see like Nintendo maybe at least put in some kind of patch or update where you can at least have that option at the very least. That way I don't have to deal with it if I don't want to. I mean, I'm still going to get this game, obviously. Like, it doesn't matter that item durability is going to be in it. I just was really kind of hoping it was not going to be. But I kind of figured since it was in Breath, I figured it'd be in Tears as well. So I'm not terribly surprised. And it didn't ruin Breath for me. I think I would have enjoyed the game more if it hadn't been in there. But that's just my 2 cents on it. But overall, this trailer has me pretty excited for it. I mean, it's a Zelda game. I'm a huge Zelda fan, always have been, so I was going to get this regardless. But yeah, this trailer definitely has me more excited. It definitely has more of a cinematic feel to it. You see Link standing with a bunch of his allies, getting ready for these big battles, and we actually see him riding on horseback, taking on enemies throughout the trailer. So it looks like there's going to be a pretty big focus on battling in this. It actually gave me vibes from Age of Calamity that I played about a year ago or so. So hopefully, maybe that means your weapons will be stronger if there's more of a focus on combat. I'm really curious to see how that plays out. But yeah, I'm definitely excited for this game. I kind of wonder if this is going to be like the last big entry on the Switch, because I think we've got to be getting pretty close to the end of the Switch's life cycle. It's been out since like 2016, 2017. It's been out for a while. And I feel like usually after 6 or 7 years, that's typically when most game developers start focusing on the next console. So I'll be kind of curious to see, like, you know, if this is going to be like kind of the end of the Switch's life cycle. It would be fitting, since it started with Breath of the Wild. It would be kind of fitting if this is kind of the game they end on a high note. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this game. But what did you guys think? Are you excited from the new trailer? And how do you feel about item durability? Did you like it in Breath of the Wild, or was it something that kind of irritated you? Let me know in the comments below. All right, everybody, I think that's going to conclude this episode. Once again, I am on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all next time. Later.